Now, there are growing calls to review the parole system. Some parole board decisions seem to have no rhythm or reason. Just yesterday, it emerged that Correctional Services, accused of murdering 6-year-old Buntle Mashiane, is a parolee. In fact, he was released on parole twice. He was first sentenced to 10 years for attempted murder in 2008, released on parole in 2013. While on parole during that time, he killed again and was sentenced to 15 years. After 5 years, he was paroled. Let's find out how this happens from Correctional Services spokesperson Singabakho Nxumalo, who joins us now virtually. Thank you very much, Mr. Nxumalo, for your time here on All Angles. What is it exactly that the parole board considers before releasing somebody? I think you've muted yourself.
Sorry about that. Yes, yeah. A very good morning and thank you for having us. As Correctional Services, I think it's important to firstly highlight that we are aware of an incident involving a 6-year-old who was earlier reported to have been kidnapped and has since been found dead. And one of the suspects there being a parolee. And the South African Police Service had indicated to us that they had identified this particular person. Hence, we also needed to start searching for him, as it was clear that he had absconded from our system of county corrections. As you will know, that when people are placed on parole, they are still being monitored by our monitoring officials. And when they cannot locate these people, they then have to report them as people who have absconded. Therefore, we need to get them back into custody. So with this particular case, is something that is totally unfortunate. It did sadden us a lot as a department, but this person for now is being identified as a suspect. We'll allow the law to take its course, and we will provide whatever assistance necessary as Correctional Services. But going back to your question, when people are placed on parole, how do we go about that? The law in South Africa is very clear that all inmates are eligible to be considered for parole placement. Consideration for parole placement does not mean or doesn't guarantee that indeed a person be placed out, but it's to say when that person was admitted in in a correctional facility, what was the correctional sentence plan and what were the programs that were identified to assist that person, one, in correcting the offending behavior, but two, in preparing that person for life post-incarceration. Everything then that an inmate will do will then be recorded. It goes into a profile of that person. Come the minimum detention period, or when the person has served half of the sentence, then that person is eligible to be considered for placement by the parole board. What do we do as Correctional Services? We then have to put together a file of this particular person. There's a structure called Case Management Committee. Their responsibility is just that, to put together this profile, all other details pertaining to this person, and submit it before the parole board. Then the parole board will go through everything and then makes a decision whether this person is ready to be placed out. But in that profile, it's not just attendance to programs and complying with that correctional sentence plan. They also look at reports by our specialists and all other material that may be submitted.
I have to come in there, Mr. Nxumalo. You said earlier that Correctional Services finds this particular incident unfortunate. That's not enough. This man was sentenced before for attempted murder. He re-offended, and then he was released the second time, this time for murder. What was it in particular in your report that was missing to show that this person has re-offended before and done a worse crime?
And we need to look at what does the law says, because in everything that we have to be guided by the law. It says once a person has served the minimum required time, that person ought to be considered for parole placement, meaning that even if a person had been in our facility before, served the time, brought back for another offense, served the time, and when that person has served the minimum required time, by law, you have to take that person before the parole board. Then the board will make a decision. We've been blamed quite harshly so, and we do understand as a department, because in the past people were saying, but you cannot be the player and the referee. Hence, a system of parole boards was introduced to say, let us get, the people outside the correctional system who must go through these profiles and make a decision. But we have to assist them in terms of submitting all whatever material that we have before us, so that, they will use it in applying their minds and then arrive at a decision that they will make. So as a department, we will do that. Unfortunately, even if a person had been incarcerated before, you can, as correctional service, you can't sit back and say, we cannot take this person before the parole board because of their previous offense, because it is only and this is exposed in the Criminal Procedure Act.
But one of your mandates is to rehabilitate. Wasn't that proof after the first time that this man was not rehabilitated? And you are correct. Our mandate is to correct people, rehabilitate them, and prepare them for life post incarceration. And how do you go about that? We have variables that we use in terms of the programs that a person will attend, the assessments that we'll conduct, and then everything will go before the parole board to say, yes, this person who has served this amount of time has participated in the following programs, and these are the assessments from specialists, and this is the person that you're presenting before you as the board. And today a 6-year-old was mutilated by this person who was in your system. Let me move to this question now. Isn't it part of what you do when you compile a report or during the time that you're considering an inmate for parole? Do you not speak to the families of the victim to get some sort of victim impact report? Do you not do that?
I think it will assist that you also give me time to explain, as you invited me to this interview. Otherwise, I think we'll not find each other. Of course, but I have to bring you back here and there. So that at least the public get to understand fully how we go about our processes. As I've explained, that a person will serve the minimum required time and is then taken before the parole board. There's quite a number of other things that happens when the person is still with us. And another step in that is what we're alluding to, the issue of restorative justice, particularly victim offender dialogue. It is one of the variables in a number of them that where the parole board will look into. A victim offender dialogue is all about bringing together the perpetrator and the victims to say, find a way and see whether you can reconcile or you can live in harmony. It doesn't mean that we have to force the other party to apologize to the victims. But we know that more often crime happens between people either who know each other or who reside within the same vicinity. So you do not want to have a situation where you place a person out and the victim feels tormented to say, how come that this person is walking on the street and I never even knew about it? Hence, then we introduce the concept of victim offender dialogue, so that let us start with that initiative. With time, then people perhaps will find one another. But that is not the only measure when you decide, because in most cases, and rightfully so, victims will say, I don't think I'm over what you did to me. I'm still hurting, and I wouldn't want this person to be placed out. And fully understandable. So by then the board will have to take into consideration everything that is submitted before them, and then make that particular decision.
Mr. Nxumalo, the family of this man who was murdered by Hlongwane was found guilty of murdering him back in 2013 or 2016, says they didn't even know that he'd be released. They didn't even know that he's in the public.
It is something that will have to be tested to say, is that indeed the fact? Because how we go about restorative justice is that it is, as I've said, it's one of those variables. A person will serve the time, will participate in various programs, will be assessed, and everything when it goes before the parole board, there's like a checklist of some sort where they then check, have you done this, have you done this, have you participated in the victim offender dialogue? And then if not, they will want to then ascertain why has this person not participated in the victim offender dialogue. And a reason will have to be provided. Either the victims perhaps could not be located, or they were not willing, but there has to be something written and submitted before the board. It cannot just be a matter of saying, no, this person has served the minimum time, consider this person. It is one of the requirements. There are many people that have not been placed out merely because the victim offender dialogue is outstanding. Hence, it's something that one will have to go back and check if that is indeed a fact, because we've made it, a mandatory process that all inmates, before they are placed out, they have to participate on the victim offender dialogue, because we fully understand the harm and the secondary victimization that the people out there are likely to be subjected to.
So if the family says they don't want to be a part of that dialogue, is it not still your responsibility to let the victim's family know that the parole board is about to make a decision, and then later let them know that the parole board has decided to release them? This family says they don't know. They found out after seeing his pictures with him having committed this recent murder. That's how they found out that he's in public.
We never give up on people, because we do get such cases a lot where someone will say, I don't think I'm ready to even see that person, let alone sitting on the other side of the table. And we always say, even if the person is placed out, there are other avenues, especially when that person is still on parole, to say, reach out to us, or our social workers, will reach out to that person to say, there is still an opportunity. Let's have this session, because it will assist. But let's say someone has served their sentence and it has expired. There are still other structures that give you an approach, that social development, because there are social workers there to say, I was offended at the time, I was not ready to face up with my victim, but I think now I'm ready, and to see how that person can be assisted. But as I've said, before the parole board, there has to be something confirming that the victims either could not be located or they were not willing, and they will have to submit a statement to that effect. And when should it happen that thereafter the victims are then located and the person is still in our system, efforts ought to be made again to reach out to those people, so that it is not just a matter of saying, okay, this person is out, let's do this thing as a requirement. We will want to have an environment in the country where people, live in a cohesive manner, to that social cohesion, and avoid these cases of crime which are really disturbing for the country. So as a department...
All right, with
yes,
this specific one, I'm sorry, Mr. Nxumalo, I'm running out of time. Is it worth investigating then why this family would say that they were not even told that this man would be released back into the public, back into Msholozi, back into the same community? Is it not worth investigating why this family would say that?
It is indeed a point of interest, and we'll want to know as a department to say what happened here, what was the case, and what was submitted before the board. It is a point of interest. It's something that we'll have to follow it up.
And also, Mr. Nxumalo, the importance of correctional services when it comes to fighting crime. Police are always the ones who are attacked because they are in the public, with the public. But, to go back to your point earlier, are you saying that Mr. Hlongwane, the parole board, or the person who is supposed to look after him from correctional services, once he's released, could not find him?
Okay, how it works is that a person will be, let's say, once a person has been placed out, a monitoring official will be assigned to that parole. Then there will be another classification. Is this person still considered to be of high risk? If that person is still of high risk, there will be a number of interactions between the monitoring official and the parole, even the frequency within which that person has to be visited at home or come to our offices. But we want to make it in a way that it's not predictable, so that we are able to make it a point that a person is complying with those parole conditions. And once that person is not located at home or is supposed to be, then it raises a red flag. But another thing which we need to highlight, when a person is placed out, there must be a positive support system, meaning someone has to sign and say, as Singabakho Nxumalo, I hereby make myself available to say, I will be, staying with this person. I'll also be monitoring this person. So that when that person should it happen, this person goes back into his old ways of committing crime, that person would be the first to come to us, or even go to any police station to say, the person that was placed out under my care on parole has disappeared or has started doing funny things, so that we are able to act and get that person back into the system as early as possible.
All right. Okay, just very quickly, a yes or a no, because I've run out of time. Was Mr. Hlongwane considered a high-risk parolee the second time?
The Okay, the first few months of a person being placed out, you are still considered over 5 risk.
Okay.
But as you continue with your time, that classification changes.
All right, I've run out of time. Thank you very much for speaking to us and for giving us your time. That was the spokesperson of the Department of Correctional Services, Singabakho Nxumalo. 6-year-old Buntle Mushiani has lost her life after a person who was arrested for attempted murder, served time in jail, paroled, and then served time again in jail for murder, was released yet again.